Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the June Town Hall. We'd like to welcome everybody, and everybody find your seats as soon as possible. We'd like to get started. And I would first like to welcome the PSAC Committee, the Finance Committee, and the Board to the stage. The crowd is kind of commensurary on both sides of me tonight, and it's great to have you all here. I'd like to start this evening with a few housekeeping things and then turn it over to the other folks who will be engaging in this process this evening. And again, thank you for coming. The first thing I'd like to talk about is we are entering into what I lovingly refer to as the political season. And it is that time for voting and for determining which candidate you're going to vote for and hearing what they have to say and what they don't have to say. And I would like to admonish all of you, as these people come to our community, they are our guests. Whether we agree with them or think they're the best person who ever walked the planet, doesn't matter. They're our guests. And we should treat them always with respect and kindness, whether it's in one of our forums or at a dinner or at one of your clubs. I would just like to encourage you that we, the people of Tellico Village, are kind and humane folks, and we need to send that message to all the people who visit us. We would not holler and yell or treat rudely anybody coming to our personal home, especially if we've invited them, and I would ask the same of you. So as we move forward into this season, please treat each other and any candidates or any visitors we have who come with the respect that they deserve and the kindness they deserve, even if you disagree with them. Now, in saying that, I'm not telling you not to ask the hard questions. That's your job. But to do so in a way that is at least polite and respectful, and to get their answers. Because if you don't let them answer, you're never going to know what they really think. And it's important to all of us. That's the first thing. The second thing that goes along with the political season is everybody wants to support their candidate. So the federal government has given us a guideline, and it says that for every candidate you support, you may have a sign in your yard to support that. So, as ridiculous as it may sound, if you're supporting 39 people, yes, you can have 39 signs in your yard. I really don't recommend it, but you can. And those are the rules that the government has set out. So I would ask that you do limit it to one sign, per candidate in your yard, as the federal government has allowed for. As to the POA, the board has decided that they do not wish to restrict signs or flags or banners in any way, except one, and that is there will be no banners that are inflammatory, make derogatory statements about anybody, has profane language in them. Those are completely inappropriate, regardless of whether we agree with them or not. They will be asked to be taken down immediately. So I just want to set that stage so nobody's surprised if you get that call. Anything that is appropriate, vote for my guy, vote for that guy, those are all great, as long as they are not derogatory and use language that we would prefer not be used publicly. Second thing on my list, tonight's meeting is about the financing of all the projects we talked about at the last meeting. And because of that, we would prefer that all the questions be dedicated to those questions about what's brought up tonight in terms of topics. If you have something completely off topic, as usual, of course I will hear you. But we would prefer that these questions be directed at that, because these are the people who can answer those questions for you. And it's your opportunity to take advantage of that and ask all of those questions. We'll also ask that people limit their questions to 2 minutes. We're interested in the question, not necessarily how you feel about the answer. And so we really want you to ask those questions, but in terms of going on and on and on about it, we would prefer that you limit those questions to 3 minutes, because as you can see around you, there's a lot of people here, and all of those people deserve the opportunity to ask their question. So that's an ask of mine, if we may. The last thing, which is definitely housekeeping, we'd like to remind all of you that irrigation is becoming a critical issue. All of us know with this weather, definitely hard on our lawns. Everybody wants to water their lawns. We would ask that our rules be maintained, and that is if you have an even number for your house, that you irrigate Monday, Wednesday, Friday, 3 days a week, and if you have an odd number, that you irrigate Tuesday, Thursday, and Saturday. And Sunday, okay, whatever they said. Anyway, I guess it's the opposite of that. So either way, whatever your number is, 3 days a week, and we would ask that no one water on Sunday. Now, anecdotally, I know that there are people who water every single night. And that's, you know, that's a choice you've made, but we would ask for the benefit of all parties involved and everybody having enough water to do what they need to do, not only in their home, but in irrigation, that you follow that plan and stick to it. It is the benefit of all the community itself. It's not just us. It's not about money. It's about everybody having water. The second thing I would add to that is, and I know that not everybody knows how to run their irrigation or understands how it works exactly, but for those of you who do, if you can do it in the middle of the night, say 1 o'clock in the morning on, that is a much easier time on the water system for you to do it at that time. I know that's not possible for some people, but if you can't, that's the easiest and best time for the water system and puts the least load on the system at that time. At this time, I'd like to introduce the Tellico Village Board President, Bob Brunetti, and he's going to have some opening statements for us. Thank you very much.
Good afternoon. Thank you. It's great to see so many people here to hear this presentation. I am Bob Brunetti, and I have the privilege of being the POA Board President for 2024. I have been a resident of Tellico Village for a little over 11 years. At the last town hall, Matt Benoit, the Director of Public Works, described the 5 water and sewer projects the village must undertake. Matt further described each of these in detail in the YouTube videos which are posted on the POA website, and I'm assuming a lot of you have watched them. Tonight, we are going to hear the Finance Committee or the Finance Advisory Committee's recommendation to the board as to how we pay for these projects. Before we start this presentation, there are a couple of points that I'd like to make. The Public Service Advisory Committee, or PSAC as we call them, and the board has spent the last 5 years obtaining studies and reports dealing with the water and sewer system. The upgrades and improvements to these systems are vital to the health and welfare of Tellico Village. I want to emphasize these are board projects that the board and the PSAC committee have been working on. The board, the Public Works Department, and the committee have been studying and preparing for these projects for several years. If you go to the Public Works page on the POA website, you will find that there are reports and studies going back to 2018 there for you to read and look at. During my 3 years on the board, numerous property owners have come to me and approached me concerning our aging infrastructure system. Last month, you heard from Matt Benoit, the Director of Public Works, the reason for these projects. The financing plan, which you are about to hear, is a result of numerous meetings and discussions over the last 9 months with the Public Service Advisory Committee, the Finance Advisory Committee, the board, Jacobs Engineering, which is our engineering firm, the Finance Department of the POA, and the administration of the POA. The board, the committees, and the administration have spent numerous hours and countless hours discussing numerous options. What you are about to hear is a result of those discussions. The volunteer members of the board and these committees are very dedicated and conscientious property owners just like you. We all take our positions very seriously and are committed to doing what is the best for Tellico Village. As we approach build-out, and we're about 83% to 85% built out according to the numbers, the board members have fiduciary duty to all property owners to ensure the sewer and water systems are up to date and functioning. To fulfill this duty, the board has to make difficult and sometimes unpopular decisions. The board has reviewed the recommendations of the Finance Committee and will be voting on this proposal at the July board meeting. At the end of this presentation, we will take, obviously, comments and questions, as Chet has indicated. I will now turn the meeting over to Mike Herrington and Brad Spiegel of the Finance Advisory Committee, who will give the proposal, explain the proposal to you. Thank you.
Bob, Chet, thank you very much. Appreciate it. I am Mike Herrington. I have the privilege of being the chair of the Finance Advisory Committee. First and foremost, though, I think we see a bunch of orange out in the crowd today, and want to congratulate the Vols for that big victory last night. Being an alumni of Michigan State, it's hard to imagine what it would take to win a national championship. I'm sure someday we'll see one. First of all, Brad is going to make the presentation, and I think we all have a indebtedness to Brad for the commitment that he's made to our community over the last 6 years on the Finance Committee. And a big part of that has been around water and sewer and what we need to do from a project perspective, but also then how, in fact, we're going to pay for that. With Brad, the entire members of the Finance Committee have spent the last 9 months, as Bob had mentioned, sort of studying this challenge. And today we're going to share with you our recommendation, along with a number of different things we considered in concluding on what would be the best path forward for us to finance the $36 million worth of projects that we have to pay for over the next 5 years. I also would be remiss if I didn't thank Judy and Jim Hinckley and all the finance team for the work that they had done. You cannot imagine the number of versions of models that we've been through, most of it grounded in the reserve study that hopefully you've had a chance to learn a little bit about, and maybe even see the recent video that Brad posted to help folks understand the basis of the reserve study. Without that, we would be in a very difficult position to try to determine what are the actual needs we have to maintain the existing assets that we own, but also the new assets that we'll be introducing, whether it be water and sewer, tenacity, et cetera. And finally, with that, I'll just turn it over to Brad, and Brad will take you through the presentation, and we look forward to the question and answer session at the conclusion. Thank you.
So we'll go ahead and kick off with the slide that Matt presented last town hall. These are the 5 projects, as everybody's mentioned, $36 million, and that's really the crux of the conversation today, is how do we land $36 million of water and sewer projects in the context of everything that goes on inside of Tellico Village. So this is our latest timing chart. These 5 projects, you'll see a huge concentration that takes place in the 25 and 27 time frame, where we've got these multiple concurrent projects going on. Without saying it and adding it to the chart, tenacity is in full swing for a good chunk of this time in 25 and 26, so lots and lots of complexity in front of us. So today's focus will be, how do we pay for these 5 projects and then keep it all in focus with everything else that we're looking at. Like most situations, there's good news and bad news. All of us, everybody in this room, are the happy owners of $375 million of assets at replacement cost. That's all of our water system, all our roads, all our sewer system, all of our buildings, all of our rec centers, our pools, our golf courses, our restaurants, $375 million. The bad news is it costs a lot of money to maintain $375 million worth of assets. Just think about each of our individual homes and those wonderful surprises when the roof leaks, when the water heater goes, when the refrigerator blows. We all experience those. So let's do a little cocktail napkin math. $36 million. There's 6,000 of us connected to the water and sewer system. That's $6,000 per person connected. I promise it won't be that bad, but it isn't going to be much better. So we'll go ahead and walk through the process as we think about that. But in the big context, when we think about $36 million, it's about 6,000 for every one of us connected to the system. So just to ground everybody in where we are with Tellico Village's cash flows, let's take a quick look at where we stand right now in 2024. We have $40 million of revenue flowing in that comes from assessments, water and sewer bills, new construction permits, tank installations, and the fees that we pay for golf, docks, rec, food, drinks, and fuel at the gas stock. So $40 million coming in every single year. The POA employs hundreds of people that administer, maintain, and serve this community. And that costs about $13 million when you cover everybody that works within the POA. We then buy water, wastewater treatment, food and sewer tanks, and that costs about $8 million at a cost of sales level. We maintain all the common property, including the golf courses, pools, entrances, rec centers, buildings, roads, and we pay utilities insurance on all those things. So that total expense pool is about $31 million, leaving us $9 million that goes into our reserves, which is for the major repair and replacement of existing assets. That existing is a key word, so we'll build on that later as we go have that conversation. That $9 million that we're putting in is in line with the current reserve study. We've said we've got to be targeting $8 to $10 million in near-term contributions to be able to have enough reserves to take care of our assets. As we put a whole bunch of new assets in, by definition, that $8 to $10 million is going to grow $1 to $2 million incrementally just because there's more stuff to take care of. So there's a YouTube presentation out on how the reserve study process works. If you're interested, it's under the TAP extension. I'd encourage you to take a look at it. We tried to build an example of us at home and what happens when you have to take care of a refrigerator, a roof, a driveway, and a water heater, kind of what the cycles are and different useful lives of different assets. And then we get the big honey, let's put in a pool question. And that honey, let's put in the pool, of course, is a new amenity. And with a new amenity, you drag along operating costs. Your electricity bill goes up because you got to run the pumps. Your bill goes up because you have to put chemicals in the pool. Oh yeah, you have to now put a fence around your yard. You need toys for the pool. All those kinds of things. And then your liability bill comes for insurance and it skyrockets because you now have a swimming pool. So with that, you've got operating expenses, and then inherently your reserve fund also needs to grow because you've got an asset that needs to be taken care of over the course of the 20-year life that it's in place. So I'd encourage you to take a look at that and go through it. So our 5-year funding challenge that we as a committee have been facing and working with the board and PSAC on is there's presently $67 million of capital requirements identified over the next 5 years. You'll recall from the prior slide that we're putting in $9 million a year towards reserves. 9 times 5 is $45 million is what we expect to put in. The bad news is we're taking out about $22 million more than we're putting in. So the $36 million required for the 5 water and sewer projects reflects that a significant amount of those new assets going in. 24 of the 36 are assets we've never had in the POA previously. So they're not replacement, they're not repair, we've never even had them. An elevated water tower, a 750,000 gallon wastewater tank, enhancements to the odor control system, and big enhancements to the Kahiti wastewater system. In addition to those $36 million worth of projects, as we mentioned, Tenaci's going on concurrently, and all the other normal repair and replacement items that we have within the context of a 5-year budget. Tenaci will be $11 million, there's another $20 within the 5-year period on the other items. So as we went through all of this as an FAC, you say, what levers can we pull? What options can we review? So just to share with you that we've been diligent in digging through these items. We've talked about how do we increase revenues? Should we charge more for the amenities that we all love in this community? We've talked about what we could do with assessments. We've talked about what we could do with cost reductions. Service eliminations. What are the things that get provided to us every day that we could quit doing? We could cancel. We could take out of the organization. We've talked about project deferrals. We've talked about taking on additional debt. We've talked about special assessments, seeking incremental grants, and the legislative options that you may be familiar with, such as the buyer-paid reserve fund real estate fee that's presently in the legislature, and the water authority, which is now off the table given the private act did not go through. We also talked about what are our restrictions. So our covenant and restrictions out there put some constraints on us that are important. That annual assessment increase is capped at 5% or CPI, whichever is higher. Now, good news for us as homeowners. Bad news is that's a knob that turning it doesn't give us a lot of dry powder to go do major projects. From a debt perspective, the POA is not, I'm going to repeat, not allowed to pledge assets or revenue streams as collateral. So when we go at the bank, they give it to us just because of our good looks, frankly. We can't say mortgage the building. We can't say we guarantee against a water stream set of revenues what we're going to have. So the FAC really took all these into context, and given all these constraints, we've said, okay, what can we do aligned with these that fulfills our and the board's fiduciary responsibilities? And we've really reached this recommendation point. So we have recommended to the board that they implement a water and sewer infrastructure fee of $80 per month, planned for 60 months, which is $4,800 per water and sewer customer. Take you back to the cocktail napkin math, 6,000, we're going to be asking for a fee that's 4,800 over 5 years. This will be billed as a separate line item in the water bill and bring in about $450,000 a month, and a total of $29 million over 5 years as additional homes come online. These funds will be kept in a separate account and used exclusively for water and sewer projects. Not for a new amenity, not for a driving range, not for salaries, not for training, any of those items, exclusively for water and sewer projects. We have a legal opinion from our counsel that confirms this is within the board's authority to implement. It is not a special assessment, and that the process we're following is consistent, aligned, and within the standards of the state of Tennessee's utility board standards. Any customer that connects to the water and sewer system subsequent to this starting will be charged a lump sum catch-up fee, and then they'll be charged the fee ongoing in their water bill. So of the $36 million of projects, $29 million will be funded from the water sewer fee and $7 million from our traditional reserves. So let's talk about some concurrent priorities. As we mentioned, the $31 million of capital required beyond water and sewer. The Tenacity rebuild will be done. We're going to pay off the CCI loan when the balloon becomes due. We believe it's prudent to purchase the golf cart fleet versus leasing it. We have a wonderful deal right now, which came out of COVID and a very low interest rate and cost of money environment. As we're looking at that now, we saw significant increases in the potential of leasing the next fleet. It makes more sense, given our cost of capital, to buy them rather than to lease them at that point. And then we'll be doing all the normal repair and maintenance items that were listed on the prior page. At the conclusion of the wastewater tank, we have a grant. It was a $2.1 million grant with a 35% copay, I guess, if we want to think of it in terms of our medical terms. So we'll get $1.3 million that will go back into reserves to help offset the cost of that tank, and that'll happen at its conclusion. While doing all this, we were very adamant with the board the necessity to maintain a $10 million minimum balance in reserves. Something can go wrong, and I suspect something will go wrong in the next 5 years. And making sure that we have the capability, if we blew a force main on the sewer system, or we lost the main line coming in from LUB on the freshwater system, or we had whatever event may be, a big sinkhole, we've got to have funds there to be financially sustainable in those types of situations. As I take you through some math on the next page, you'll see that we end up at a $12 million ending balance. Just like your checkbook, every day is a different balance as we go through the process. So it's not like this is a magic fund of money that's out there. 12 happens to be the ending number. We are lowered during months within the planning process, but we don't violate that $10 million base. Part of the reason we were able to not have our cocktail napkin math come home at 6,000, we're down at 4,800, is we had identified within the reserve study $14 million of major road work coming out in 28 when it hit the end of useful life. In working with the team, we were able to say we believe that we can prudently feather that out, take it out of 28, put it into 29, 30, and 31. Spreading that helps bring down the burden of not having our $80 bill be a $100 bill. So like your checkbook, here we go. We start with the $16 million beginning balance in reserves. We've pulled out $2.5 million from the actual cash balance because that was insurance proceeds we've received so far on the Tenasseee fire. So we backed that out. I'll talk about that in just a second on the Tenasseee funding. We expect to get another $1.5 million related to the Tenasseee fire coming in very shortly, right, Chet? Yes. Okay. So, very shortly as we go through that process. So we then add the $45 million of reserve contributions, 9 a year for 5 years coming in. We add the $1 million grant from water and sewer. $36 million goes out for the water and sewer projects, $20 million for the normal maintenance and repair, $9 million goes out for roads. We spend right around 1.5-ish million a year. That's PMM, as well as a lot of the maintenance activity we do. It's not a capital project. It would normally be maintenance, but that does come out of our reserve fund as well. $7 million out of reserves related to Tenasseee. Tenasseee is going to be 11, 7 from reserves, 4 from insurance. Then we've got the loan payoff, the golf cart fleet, and we've already written the check to repay the PPP loan to satisfy the agreement with the Department of Justice. Then we get to the point where all of us hate in our checkbook. We're overdrawn $17 million. Hence, we have a water and sewer fee we're facing, $29 million coming in over that 5-year period, and it brings us back at 2028, 5 years in the future, at roughly a $12 million ending balance. And again, that's going to bounce a little bit, but never drop below 10. When we think about the $36 million in particular, you see the heavy concentration in 26 and 27, just like we saw on the timing chart, with the completion being in 28 of most of the major activity on these 5 projects. Because of when we're starting with the water and sewer amounts, and because of what we're charging with the water and sewer amounts, we have a longer time horizon to catch up with our money coming in than our money going out. Fortunately, we have enough in reserves right now, we can balance it. But as you look at the 26 and 27 time horizon, we're taking more out of reserves than we will actually want to ultimately take out. And then we pay it back in 28 and 29 at $4 million in each of those years, so that the funding for the $36 million of projects is 29 from the water sewer fee and 7 ultimately from the reserve fund. So like every forecast ever created, and I've done a lot of them in my career, it's all about the assumptions that went into the analysis And it's aligned with the risks and opportunities as reality plays out. So we've got to efficiently run the POA operations so that we can create that surplus every year. We've got to manage these major capital projects so there aren't overruns. We've got to figure out how to fund new amenities that people are going to want along the way because they're on the outside looking in right now. And we've got to manage the implications of inflation. Inflation hasn't been too crazy recently, sans COVID, where it was over 9%. So we're kind of coming back down now, but it's something we have to watch throughout this entire process. One of the things we heard in the Jacobs reviews was that inflation on water and sewer type activities, unfortunately, was running higher than we're seeing in the general inflation number. So just like we've seen with real estate and some construction prices, those are things that will have to be closely monitored. If we can manage all these risks, then some of the opportunities listed here could help us lower the fee or shorten its duration. If the risks materialize, an extension beyond the 60 planned months may be required, and it would take a board vote to do that. So we're trying to balance all of these things. We believe we have a prudent forecast and a prudent approach. We believe that the opportunities that aren't built into the forecast as listed here can offset the risks that are identified there. But all these things got to come together for us to bring this project home. So the end game, of course, is to maintain the assets we all own, to maximize the quality of life that was really the reason we all moved here. And that's what we're trying to accomplish with this recommendation. So the next steps, the board will vote formally on July the 17th for this recommendation. We believe that it is within the board's fiduciary responsibility to undertake this, and we have the legal opinion that they're authorized to act without a property owner vote. So this is planned to start with your September water bill at $80 a month additional charge and plan to continue for 60 months. The one dangling item on this chart that we haven't talked about yet is we are waiting on a ruling from the Tennessee Department of Revenue on taxability for the water piece of this. Right now we all pay sales tax on our water portion. We don't believe that an infrastructure project is taxable. They need to answer that question. So with that, I will turn it over to Chet on clarifying questions on this presentation and how we're going to finance all this. I thank you for your time and attention.
Thank you, Brad. We appreciate it. And again, I would like to encourage everyone to ask the questions. If you have a question, you go through it, give us your 3 minutes, give us your question. If you sit down and go, oh wait, I forgot, please feel free to get up and come to the end of the line and ask your second question. It's okay. We just want to be sure that everybody has a chance to voice that opinion. You're up, sir.
My name is Richard Pope. I live in Mealacqua. I like the videos that Matt put together, but in the videos he stated that the design is in early stages, and so the 36 million is a low estimate. And so when will we know the bigger number? And I saw on the chart it goes out a couple years in the design. So chances are this is going to go more than 60 months. My next point is on the storage unit. I believe we need one. Is 750,000 gallons enough? We're not going to fix the problem, which is the leaky units in everybody's house. And we don't know how many of those are leaking today. If it doubles, it's going to, right now, per the videos, at the peak time, we're going to exceed 400 gallons per minute from what Loudoun can obtain, and that gives us 31 hours of coverage. But if only 20% are leaking today, and all of a sudden in 5 years, 50% are leaking, that's going to more than double the volume, and the 750,000 tank will not be big enough. So I ask that we, fix the problem as well as put in the tank. And then, are we moving forward to bring our infrastructure into alliance with Loudoun Utilities so they can take it over and we can get rid of this burden off of the POA and go to what a POA should be working in and not the public utilities? Thank you.
Okay, all good questions. The first question about the bids, I can make a comment, but I would prefer to hear from somebody who's dealt with them. In all of these bids, we have been admonished that they are not low, but actually high. So we hope that that is the case, but your point is well taken. As we go through these things over a period of 3 to 4 years, things can change in that time period, there is no question. And one of the things that I wanted to be sure that everyone understood, and we kind of talked about it, but every year, all of these projects for that 5 years are going to be reevaluated. Every month, we're going to be reporting on where the funds are and how much has been taken in and where they're kept and what that value is. This is never going to be done in a volume and once a year we go, oh, by the way. It's going to be an ongoing project that we have to report on and we have to maintain. And to be frank with you, that's just as much for our ability to manage it, as it is to report to you. And so that's a given. We're going to have to manage that in every way we possibly can and keep that in front of us as well as you in terms of what we come up with. As to finding out the problem, I think that both Matt and PSAC have already discussed some of our options. And what we're looking for is time. But I would really prefer that somebody who is not as, how shall I say, administrative and more mechanical, give us some answers on that. Anybody want to step up and take that one? Or do I refer to Matt? You aren't getting out of it, brother. Just jump up and grab the phone. It's good.
Okay. Everybody hear me? Good question. And I would be very honest in telling you I've worked here 7 months. And I probably spent the first 3 months of working here banging my head against the wall going, there's got to be a better way to deal with this inflow and infiltration. Storing it seems difficult to me. And through the counsel of PSAC and Jacobs Engineering, I came to understand that's the issue. So once I wrapped my head around that, you're right. And for anyone who says, well, wait a minute, you build a tank, is it big enough? Is it even really the right thing to do? You've got the source of the problem, and you've got the problem, and you're doing a good job dealing with the problem, but you got the source. Fair point. I think what I run into is simply, it's going to get fixed. It has to get fixed. Standing here today, do I have a solution for you? I got ideas, but not even anything that I would proffer publicly. I always got things running through my mind. What I do feel very strongly about is you're on about a 30-month clock, okay? From the time we get our bids in till that thing is open and in service and helping to solve the root cause, that's where I need my efforts. Am I ever going to quit thinking about ways to deal with these tanks and deal with the inflow and infiltration? No, I will not. But I understand that isn't going to work in the long run. What I understand clearly right now, that storage tank is a critical piece of something that we need. And I'm not giving up on that issue. If you watch my videos, and I'm glad you did, hope everyone has a chance. I pointed out some of the difficulties with that issue. It isn't simple. And there are simple things you can address, but they cost money. And I was kind of illustrating the fact that those things cost money, and you have to be careful not to outspend your problem. So I don't know if I'm answering your question other than to say I get it. I get presented with that issue weekly probably, either between PSAC or PSAC meetings. And you're right. You're not going to hear me to say that issue doesn't need to be addressed. Today, I got ideas, nothing I would even discuss publicly because I'm not even sure they're going to work. But you're right, and that issue's not forgotten. For now, I understand what needs to be done.
Because I know in your video you explained a big portion of it is the connections on the 3 pipes that come in. But I believe a lot of it is grading issues. I know one of my neighbors, hers floods out every time it rains because the way that the hill slopes down, it just flows and buries hers every year. And so my theory is if we can get around and look for all the ones in the grading issues and solve those grading issues, it could eliminate quite a bit of the water flowing into the system.
Could well be right. Everybody thanks Richard Pope. He watched my videos, and I appreciate it. And that's what they're there for. The questions that he's asking are great ones and are indicative of the fact that he watched them, took the time to understand them, formulated some good questions, and I'm deeply appreciative. You're right. There are grading issues. There are potentially cross connections that shouldn't be there. There may be things that don't have anything to do with grading and cross connection. It could simply be the tank's old, the tank's sitting sideways, the connections upstream are broken. There's a lot of things going on there, and there isn't a simple fix probably for any particular home.
Is there a switch on it, brother?
Okay. To your $36 million comment and its adequacy, particularly where we are in sort of the engineering phase of each of these respective projects, we as a committee spent a lot of time on that in the sessions that we had with Jacobs. None of us are engineers, but we spent a lot of time going through the projects, thinking about it in the context, do we have adequate contingent reserves in the event that these projects go over budget? Are we adequately factoring in inflation? And we used the recommended number from Jacobs of somewhere in the 7 to 10% for projects of this nature. And for us, we felt that there was sufficient consideration in the estimate that we only want to do this once. We don't want to come back to the well. We really don't want to increase it. If anything, we'd like to see it come down over the next couple of years because we've been able to manage it more effectively, and some of Matt's brilliant ideas actually do come into public domain, and we're able to achieve that. But we did take that into consideration, and we feel like while there's never any guarantee that this number we have is the number and the duration, but we do feel like there's been a significant amount of time put in by PSAC, by us, by Matt, by others, to make sure that what we're putting forward is a sufficient base number for us to use.
The one question you asked, I'm getting in front of the mic here. The one question you asked that I did not answer, and I will now, is the question of when and if LUB would take us over. The original conversation where I had that conversation with LUB was their manager, who is no longer here. And so management has changed. The philosophy of LUB has slightly changed. But they still stand with the general question, well, when you fix it, we'll think about it. And that's the game. So I don't disagree with you. I am, I'm not exaggerating. The first day I was here, almost the first words out of my mouth was, what are we doing in the business of water and sewer? What were we thinking? So I agree. And these are the things we're working toward. But I wanted to make sure I at least address that. Yes, sir.
My name is Bob Thompson.
Bob, get a little closer to the mic. I want to be sure people can hear you. I apologize.
I was led to believe, maybe I'm wrong, that the Tenasseee was going to be $7 million. Now it's 11.
No, sir. The current budget that the board has approved. Now, I need to be clear when I say this. The board has not approved for us to spend $11 million. They have said that within that budget, they will see and entertain what will come back in terms of a budget for building Tenasseee. $11 million is that number. $7 million was discussed, but after we got our first tentative estimates of what it would cost, we had to revise that, and the board did agree to revise to allow $11 million as the bid limit, but we will not, we have not gotten those back yet, and the board, frankly, has not approved that Tenasseee be built yet because we don't have a budget. We don't have actual bids for building yet. We should have those within the next 4 weeks. That's our goal. They've been sent out. We have 4 bidders, and that would be the goal.
And if it's possible to delay expenditures, why not do half and half? We have the facility for the golfers, and we don't have anything for a restaurant. If we could put up the restaurant building and wait on putting up the golf building, we would get all the benefits without having to expend quite so much money right away. My point.
Thank you, sir.
John Olson, Tanasi. This is for Kahidi Wastewater, Project 5. The second chart point indicates a dry weather flow of 120 gallons a minute. 120 gallons a minute equals 173,000 gallons per day. There are 600 homes in Kahidi. So the average sewer flow in Kahidi is 288 gallons per day. For reference, Tellico Village is 74 gallons. Why does Kahidi have 4 times the sewer flow of Tellico Village? Another way of looking at that is if you got 288 gallons of sewer, you're probably purchasing 400 gallons of water. If you're purchasing 400 gallons of water, then the average bill for water in Kahidi would be 12,000 gallons a month.
Very good question. I don't have my notes in front of me. You've obviously taken some notes. It's a good question. I'm sure you know exactly where it came from.
I don't.
Can I get you an email or a phone number and give you a call when I got some stuff in front of me? I don't have that stuff in front of me. You're asking a good question. I'm not quite following what you're saying. It's a good question. Can I follow up with you? Would that be all right?
Yeah, but I mean, what we're talking about here is the numbers show a 4 times difference.
I understand.
If you roll it back to what we do in Tellico Village,
I understand.
the wastewater project isn't justified.
You're asking a good question, and I'd just love to follow up with you.
Richard Pope again. My first questions were from Matt's videos. This question is from today's presentation. And I want to know why, since this is a long-term project that will benefit every lot in the community, why are only the current 6,000 users of this system being charged to pay for it? There should be a charge to every unit, every lot here that eventually will be using the infrastructure that we are paying for.
So as noted in the presentation, anybody that connects subsequent will be paying into the funds, so they would be paying their fair share. There are a number of people who own multiple lots adjacent to their homes where they wanted it for privacy. If you don't build a home on the lot, you're not going to get charged with water and sewer if you're not connected to water and sewer. At the point a home connects, the ACC fee will be that $4,800 or whatever it ends up being that they would get charged at that connection point for water and sewer. So it is contemplated anybody connected to water into the future would have that.
So will they pay $4,800 or will they pay a portion?
No.
Let's say they come in 3 years from now, they're only going to pay for 2 years.
So if they connect 3 years from now, they'll pay a lump sum catch-up. So they pay 36 months times $80 to the ACC, and then subsequent to that, they're getting their water bill, they'll be paying the $80 like the rest of us going forward. It was. It's on the slides.
The bottom line is they're paying $4,800 either way. That's the bottom line. Yes, sir.
Barry Coral. Quick question. I don't have any problem with the presentation or the solution. My concern, though, is we started putting the infrastructure in, water and sewer lines, back in 1987. That means they're 37 years old in Tokwa. As part of the study that Jacobs and you people did, have you considered when that's going to start failing to the point where we have to replace them, and what is going to be the timing and the cost to do that?
Yep. Part of the reserve study process is exactly what it does, is it goes through and it says, When did the infrastructure go in? What's the useful life? How much remaining useful life is there? And what will it cost to replace it, inflation adjusted, at the point it needs replaced? So fortunately, if you think about our water and sewer system, it represents 2/3 of the replacement cost of assets. But because they're longer-lived assets, our contributions to the reserve study, approximately 40% of the funds we put into the reserve study go for water and sewer because we get to stretch it out over a longer time. But they are identified, and in the cash flow model that has been built, we use those reserve study outflows so that when they reach the end of their useful life, there will be sufficient funds there, assuming we're doing what we're supposed to do and saving all along. It's like saying you'll have enough for retirement if we all put into the 401k every year, enough for our retirement. We got to continue doing that. The funds will be there.
What is the date where that study says we're going to have to start replacing them? What year do we think that's going to be?
It depends on the size of pipe, and different sizes literally have different useful lives, so it depends on the size of pipe when it went in, but that's all laid out as part of the reserve study calculations.
Thank you.
Yes.
Yes, ma'am.
Hi, Darlene Stahl. Question, someone mentioned the buyer-paid reserve fund was going through the legislature. I think that's what was mentioned today. Okay, in the past we've talked about that, and I'm assuming that that is the transfer fee, as we call it in real estate, that someone buying a new property would pay X thousand and that would go into the fund. I thought that had been talked about as being used to help defer some of this water project costs. Is that no longer the case, or?
As of right now, it's listed as an opportunity. The legislature hasn't acted, so we don't have anything in place to do that. The thought process is once that went into place, the funds collected would go into our pooled reserve fund, which is exactly where all of these projects, when we talk about funding from reserves, comes from. So it would be a contribution to reserves if the legislature approves that.
It would just be nice to have it be used for the water project instead of, new whatever.
I agree.
Instead of my
But it's not- if they-
$960 a year.
I've learned that don't count on the legislator till the legislator
Of course.
does something.
Second part of my question is, we got a nice increase in our minimum water bill, and I only ever use the minimum. I don't even meet the minimum. A few months ago, with this $80 a month on top of it, what's to say that next year there's not another increase? I thought part of that increase was, in fact, to help with this project. Will there be another increase in water next year?
So we found out today?
Well, that's just TAS.
I know, but yeah, today as an example, we found out TAS is raising their water rates 2.5% and their sewer rates 3.5%. And we suspect, given LUB's cost study that they do, looking where our recovery rate is versus other recovery rates across the LUB system, that we'll be getting an increase again. So at budget time, I highly suspect we'll see water rates going up because of the cost increases we're seeing flowing through.
But is that just a pass-through from LUB as opposed to, I think the last one was more than just a pass-through, was it not?
In everything we do, there's markup that goes along. So if you think what happens in an LUB environment, a multiplier effect for rough math is 3. So if you buy water at $5, think getting charged 15, and the reason per thousand. The reason for that is you've got all the employees and all the infrastructure you're running and all the overhead that goes with the billing and the cleaning of the pipes and all those activities. That markup covers all those types of things and makes a contribution towards the ongoing repair and maintenance. As I pointed out, because this project or 5 projects are so big, there just isn't enough there in the margin to be able to fund all of these.
Okay. Yeah, I understand. It's just for some of us who don't even use the water we're paying for now, because I never use the minimum. If you're single, you pretty much never use it. It keeps going up and up and up. And I may make a suggestion that when I saw the new rates a few months ago, after you met your minimum, the next grouping the price per gallon went down considerably. It was actually an incentive to use more water, not an incentive to use less. Maybe we should change the structure to incentivize people to use less water and hence put less stress on the system.
Yeah, I understand your comment. The point I'll make is a portion of that base fee is for water. A portion of that base fee is also for administering your water bill, collecting your water bill, reading your meter, having service connection to your home. So those activities are included in the base bill. So just as we think about it, it isn't just, gee, that's for 2,000 gallons. It's the connection service fee plus the 2,000
Right.
gallons you're consuming
Yep.
on both water and sewer.
Just something to think about. Okay,
Thank you.
Hello, good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
My name's Chris Hoffer. I've been here about 5 years. I live in Tanassi. I'd like to first thank Judy for answering some of my questions. I appreciate you being so responsive. And Matt, your town hall presentation was fantastic, and it helped us all understand what our needs are here. The only one concern I have is, what is Plan B if we are challenged somehow in court? I know we got a legal opinion, but what if somebody brings some litigation to say this $36 million and this water tap fee, buy-in fee, in fact, is a special assessment? If we get hung up in court, what's Plan B?
Go ahead, Bob. I have an answer for that, but go ahead, Bob.
Well, that has been discussed. During all discussions, we understand that there are residents here who are obviously not going to be happy with this, and they may, in fact, bring litigation against the board, claiming that this is, quote, a special assessment and it's not a water fee. So the board, with the opinion we've gotten and the covenants and restrictions we've looked at, it's a water fee. It's not a special assessment. Just to understand, if a group of homeowners get together and decide to sue us, you're suing yourself, because we're going to use your money to defend this lawsuit. So we hope that doesn't happen. We hope people understand the necessity of these projects, but Plan B is we simply would defend the lawsuit and defend our position.
So to that end, though, I want to be sure that everyone understands the board never entered into this. In fact, the very first words out of their mouth was, can we do this? This doesn't seem right. And so we went to the books. We went to the litigators. We went to the attorneys and asked these questions. Actually, we went all the way to legislation to find out what are the other communities that are public utilities? What are the rights they have or don't have? Because even if our documents say that, we could step outside and say we're outside of what TDEC would allow. So therefore, we get in trouble there. So we went as far as going to every level to be sure there wasn't something silly that we missed, to be sure this was appropriate, because this is an asset fee. It is not a special assessment. And there's a couple reasons why you can identify it as that. There's legal issues with, we have to, number one, keep this in a separate account. Number two, it can only be spent and must be defended, even in our audit, as being spent on water and sewer, period. So let's just say, for argument's sake, at the end of the day, this all goes great. Now, you talked about the reserve fund fee, that legislation. We've talked about possibly selling land. All of these things are going to have to be evaluated as we go. So when I say we're going to evaluate this on a monthly basis, I'm not trying to be placating or funny. We're going to have to, because ultimately, as these funds come in, our goal and our hope is that we'll be able to evaluate this cost every single month and say, okay, we've now reached this point. We have all our bids. We have all our money. We know what we can do. We can adjust. And so it is our goal to do that. It's not that we just want to, yep, we'll go 60 months and everything's good and we don't really care. Not at all. In fact, we're going to chase this all the way to the end. We have to. It is our responsibility to, I guess, is a more accurate statement. So there's never going to be a point in time where we're not going to be evaluating where are we in the money. As an example, they brought up the bids. These are all estimates. Well, what are we going to do if they come back? You know, he's worried about them coming back higher. I'm just as concerned about them coming back $1 million cheaper. Now, we're all going to go, yay, but now we've got to figure out, okay, how do we cut back? Where do we cut back? How do we alter those fees so that people are only paying for what we're spending? And that's the goal, period.
Just want you to know that's just a hypothetical question.
Sure, no, I mean, it is a fair question.
I don't plan to do it.
Yeah.
You seem to be looking at me a little bit, Bob, like, do you have any plans? And I really don't.
We had so many discussions about so many different things that, you know, you can't imagine the number of questions that came up and the scenarios that we looked at and thought about. But we're satisfied that we are on good legal grounds in doing this, if in fact the board does vote for it in July.
Yeah, it comes from my sports background that I knew that if the defense did something else, I needed a plan B.
Sure.
Well, and the only thing I would add, one, FAC, like the board, was very concerned about getting the proper legal opinion and the like to protect the interests of the community in that regard. We also made some of the decisions we made as it relates to no debt and a few other things, so we did leave some arrows in our quiver in the event we needed them. So while it may not be sufficient to cover it all, we're leaving ourselves some powder in the event that we have to shift.
Okay. Just one final thing I'd like to tell PSAC and the Finance Committee. Appreciate all the work and all the effort. Great plan. Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Good afternoon. I'm Kevin Kukluk. I live on Deluski Lane in Tokwa, and I want to start by thank you for scheduling this meeting today. I've been a property and a homeowner here in the village since 2008, and I've been a participant in several activities in the village, including long-range plan with Marty, recreation, other committees as an observer, water, at Ease Fitness, and also Loudoun County various volunteer activities. I would like to address a few items related to the proposed water sewer project currently under review by the POA and the POA board. I will keep my comments, though extensive, short and focused. Although I've not been actively following or privy to the details of the proposal group, it is fairly clear to me that the approach through all the iterations has resulted always in a single option proposal. That is design, build, and operate a Teleco Village-based water distribution and sewage handling system. Doing an engineering review and a root cause assessment, if it has been completed, has not been proffered as an option. The proposal cost is now, when I came in today, it was $40 million, it's 36. To put that in perspective, the total excess revenues over expense for the past 7 years through 2023 is $22 million, approximately the balance of the current reserve account for the village. I've reviewed the 5 YouTube videos placed on the notices for today's meeting and would summarize them as more volume, more equipment and process controls to treat water and rain conditions, and safety enhancements to the workers. In my view, the volume appears to be adequate, although close to limits. There's no identification of the root cause of the sewer treatment volumes other than there's too much water when it rains, and there are no alternatives for odor control. When I moved to the village in 2008, the number one amenity requested by the owners was a walking bike trail through the village. POA funded a study, which in my view was excellent, and it determined the cost of the trail would be $11 million at about $1 million a mile. This, and for other reasons, proved to be untenable. The study did advance several other things that I'm not going to talk about, but the outcome of it was that we found out that we could run kayaks around Tokwa Bay, and we could also, we would have recreation, would put together a series of trails that worked out very efficiently and were very low cost. I believe the same can be applied, that same synergy can be applied to the process of the water sewage plant. Loudoun County is in a process of expanding services, including schools, sewers, water, and other utilities to plan for future growth. And I'm going to run out of 3 minutes. But remedying the excess water during rain events will not improve with time as more land gets cleared of trees, Current old equipment continues to deteriorate, and assuming these causes are in the excess water in the sewage treatment process. I'll be glad if somebody sends me an email address. I'll forward this to an appropriate person. I have about one more minute, but I'll go to the 3 minutes. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Good afternoon. My name is Bob Lusher. I live in Chachuca Coves. I've been here a whopping 6 months, so I'm very new to this thing, and I don't know quite as much as I'd like to know about it, but I'll ask some questions anyway. I think one thing we're potentially ignoring is the fact that we're all part of the problem, and that's solved by what's called demand-side management. Chet, you made an excellent point about if everyone watered at 1 o'clock in the morning, it'd be less of a burden on the system. First I've heard of anything like that. So I come from the western United States, from the state of Colorado, where water is a very contentious issue. So I think we need to maybe look at some demand-side management things that would potentially shape that demand a little bit better to our, to what we need. Now, a huge difference? No, but you're influencing consumer behavior. It takes a long time to do, but once you do it, people continually pick up on them. Things like, low flow shower heads, different types of toilets that maybe don't use as much water, those types of things. And I think, you could potentially put up some savings by looking at those types of programs. And if you look at just about any utility in the western United States, you're going to see that they have those types of programs because water, water just isn't unlimited out there. Second thing is, I feel like there's a potential blind spot here, and that has to do with Loudon. Now, Matt, you made wherever Matt, oh, there's Matt. Matt, you made a statement about, well, we don't know what Loudon is going to do with their ability to take our wastewater. I mean, I think that's something we need to kind of know, because if they say we're not making any changes, this village is going to continue to grow, and they may not be able to meet our demand, and maybe we need to look at, instead of putting $8 million into a storage system, perhaps what we need to do is to do a joint venture with the city of Loudon to increase their pump capacity, which will allow us to maybe not spend $8 million on retention, but maybe $6 million, $5 million, I don't know. Now that would, maybe require something beyond what we can do as a POA, but to me it's the types of things that need to be looked at.
So in answer to that question, and this is to a point anecdotal, because until something's in writing, it didn't happen. But my conversations with LUB has indicated that they are indeed spending a lot of money enlarging their septic system and the volume that it can take. The gotcha in that is the pump that takes our sewer to that building for Loudon is not part of that upgrade. And so, yeah, exactly. And so the question is how do we influence them to make that expenditure? And is there a payout for us to have a venture with them to get that done? And so far, it's kind of crickets on that. They've not been willing to talk about it, other than to admit there is no intention at this point of increasing that pump ability to pump out to the system. So one thing I would like to add is that I'm constantly trying to up our involvement and discussion with LUB and TAS. Both of those companies are key providers, and to understand what they're up against and what their concerns are and how we can work with them to do that. We just experienced that this weekend. And so that's to say that we're blind to that, we're not. We just haven't found the magic way of getting into having them want to participate with us. And they're going through I guess you would call it a restructuring for LUB. And so because of that, there's a little bit of a pause in anybody who wants to commit to those kinds of discussions.
I want to ask one other further question. Again, I've only been here 6 months, so I haven't really spent a lot of time studying this. Obviously, if we could issue 30-year debt based upon revenue, that would smooth a lot of this out.
Sure.
I'm assuming that perhaps our charter or our covenants can't be changed to allow us to make a guarantee against revenue.
That is correct. In fact, it's also a state regulation. POAs, well, not just POAs, any condo, any homeowners association cannot use their assets as collateral. And by the way, that's been true in every state I've ever worked in: Florida, Georgia, Alabama, Hawaii. They're all the same.
I could sleep better at night knowing that you've looked at that. Thank you very much.
You bet.
Good afternoon. The name is Ken Austin. And first of all, thank you for the work you've done in the presentation. You've done much better than the Loudoun County on their schools. My question is, from the rate of the build-out and what we have left to build out, have we factored in the money these new residents are going to bring into that $36 million in the next 5 years?
Yes, is the short answer.
Yes.
Okay. Next question is, the opposite side with the fees that we're putting on the new homeowners, and now this fee, at some point, we become less desirable.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear the last part. I apologize.
We become less desirable as a place to...
Less desirable, yeah, I understand. I guess my answer to that is probably completely a useless answer, other than to say, I believe if you built a grass shack in East Tennessee, you could sell it. It's just, right now, the idea of somebody not wanting to buy here, when I look at our neighbors like Wind River and Rarity Bay and the prices they're charging their homeowners, apparently you can charge anything and people will still buy it.
Okay.
But our intent is not to do that. I need to be clear about that. I don't want anybody to leave this room thinking that all of these people, including myself, are actually having a good time up here. We're not. This is not the kind of information that any of us want to deliver to you. And I am sincere as a heart attack when I say that. This is not good news. This is not something that makes us happy. As an administrator, frankly, it's a nightmare. It is. And for me to have to bring this to you and ask you to understand it is in no way simple. And I'm not looking for sympathy. I just want you to understand we take this seriously. We do not take this as trivial. And my staff and all the other people who are involved in maintaining this community know that we have a responsibility to try and cut costs, find ways to do it better, find ways to do it cheaper in everything we do to accommodate this, because we're just as much a part of this game as you are.
Thank you.
You bet.
Good afternoon. My name is Mike Kirk. I live on Chota Hills Lane. I heard a word today during this presentation which I found a little bit disturbing, and that was amenities. I got the impression from the presentation is that amenities would, or looking for additional amenities, that search would perhaps still continue while we're going through this process. I think what we ought to be talking about is more austerity than we would be amenities. So can I get some clarification as to what we're talking about here?
Absolutely.
If we're looking for additional amenities? Thank you.
Absolutely. We're not looking for additional amenities, and we left anybody with that opinion. We're not. Tenacity is the only amenity that we currently have on our radar for the next 5 years. Now, that may change as things happen, but no, we're not looking to add anything. In fact, we're looking to try and control cost at every place we can. I think the term amenities had to do with the fact that all of these items that we're talking about, these 5 processes, are new. We don't own one of these now, so we're not really replacing it or repairing it. This is a brand new thing we're putting in as an amenity, if you want to use that term, but it's a functionality. And so that's the only thing we're talking about. We're not looking to add anything else at this time. Please know.
Okay, second question here, and it has to do with tenacity. Okay, I do not understand why we, talking, round numbers, $7 to $11 million, why we're continuing on with this. We have temporary facilities there that people seem to be satisfied with. why can't we call a halt to this for the time being? Hey, lighten up, everybody.
Hey, guys, let him finish his question, please.
And use that money towards, the water projects, which are a need as opposed to a want.
Okay. I'm going to let somebody else answer besides me, since I seem to be doing more of the talking. Anybody else want to comment on that, guys?
I mean, I'll comment on it because one of the options we considered was delaying Tenacity. We had a long discussion about it at the FAC. We talked about the board level as well. And to be honest with you, we thought we were being short-sighted if we delayed that project based on the value of that property, and adding a building of that magnitude could contribute to the value of the homes in the community. And delaying it would only increase the cost as we moved it out, and also remove the value that it would provide to the community. So we just thought it'd be short-sighted if we delayed that project.
Okay, thank you.
John Olson, I want to address project number 1, the elevated storage tank, which is the pressure problem, which is pretty much laid to the feet of irrigation. Chet talked on it, gentlemen before me talked on it. We have to modify our irrigation times. And it's very evident if you look at the Jacobs Engineering peak demand curve, the morning flow rate is 2,900 gallons a minute, and we have a pressure problem. The afternoon flow rate is 1,600 gallons per minute, and we don't really have a pressure problem. 2,900 gallons a minute produces 3 times the pressure loss of 1,600 gallons. So in addition to the Monday, Wednesday, Friday, Tuesday, Thursday, Saturday, if we can have a 1 to 4, a 5 to 8, a 9 to noon time, and ask people or assign people times to irrigate their lawn, all they have to do is reprogram their irrigation controller at no cost to Tellico Village.
So to that point, I would like to throw out that we've talked about changing behavior in terms of irrigation. I know that in the past, the Public Works Department has offered homeowners that if they don't understand their irrigation problem or their irrigation system, that we'd be happy to stop by and help them with that and, pardon me, help you modify that to do that. The only thing I can ask is this: unless I start a irrigation police, I cannot get people to follow the rules. As an example, we sent out an email, and I know it went out late on Saturday night. Sunday morning, we're driving through the properties, and we found out of maybe 400 homes, there were 15 people still irrigating, and this was at 8 o'clock, between 6 and 8 in the morning. So the moral of the story is, until all of us understand the price of not trying to follow the rules, to take this example and use this, we've given people some instructions about irrigating earlier, irrigating on specific days, and if we did those things, we would see some changes. So far, there's not been a lot of people willing to comply. And so all I would say to your question and your point is, if we as a community, all those listening online and here, would make the decision, I want to do the best I can for my community, so I'm going to alter it and change what I do. I still want my green lawn, I get all that, but I'm going to change how I do it so it doesn't affect the system at such a rate that we currently have. And I know a lot of people want their irrigation to go off at a time when they're up so they can see that it's actually working. That isn't always the best. And so I would ask, along with this gentleman, that you think about it. Think about changing your behavior. Think about following these ideas and these guidelines that we've given you. Whether you do it my way or the way they said, doesn't matter. However you do that, make these changes, because it will affect your community and it will affect how it impacts our water system. It's a change, it's a lifestyle change. And I frankly really don't want to hire a bunch of people to be the irrigation police and drive around at 2 o'clock in the morning going, hey, you're an odd number, what are you doing? I'm actually offended by even saying that to you out loud. It's just not necessary. We're all adults. We all understand these impacts. We're all having to pay the same price. So please think about that. Please think about making some changes in what you do. And if you don't understand it, there is at least a dozen people who are more than willing, and I'm going to throw myself in that group, that are more than willing to stop by and look at your irrigation system and help you set it up if you don't understand it. And I get that. Not everybody does. But we're more than willing to help with that, to be sure that it happens.
What you're saying won't help the system. Brad participated in the water usage for the 2023, and he came up with 20% irrigate. That's 1,000 homes.
Yep.
Okay, if you have 999 homes irrigating at the same time, whether it's 1 in the morning or 10 in the morning, you're in trouble.
Well, but
so all I'm saying is, let's assign the time. You're saying people don't change what they do. Well, assign to them. Say, hey, John Olson, you do Monday, Wednesday, Friday. Turn your irrigation system on at 1 and turn it off at 4. Hey, Pete Smith, Tuesday, Thursday, Saturday. Turn it on 9, turn it off at 12, until you tell people, hey, this will help the system. If you do that on 1,000 homes, you're only going to have 167 homes irrigating at one time. You don't have a pressure problem. But you got to assign things. You can't just say, hey, please do better. If you change your time, it's going to be good.
Well, we've assigned the time so far, and that hasn't worked. But I am happy, and I mean this sincerely, I'm happy to look at what you're doing and throw it out there in a telegram to see how it works. Because I don't disagree with you. We can shift times within the evening times. Task has told us.
Well, you're going to have to assign the times or people.
Yeah, Task has told us
do.
that any time after midnight, between midnight and 5 o'clock, their system is operating at full tilt. They can take as much water as we need at that point in time, because nobody's taking showers, nobody's washing clothes, nobody's doing all those other things that drag on the system. That's the only reason why I mentioned those times. But I get what you're saying. I don't disagree with your point at all.
Okay, but if you take that peak that hits at 7 a.m., that gives you the big pressure drop, and you move it to 3 o'clock, you're still going to have people irrigating that have no pressure, because you just moved the peak. You got to drop the peak down. You got to move water from the peak to before 4:30 and after 9:30, and then the peak won't hit you in pressure.
Got it.
And you got to assign times to do that.
Yep, I got it. Thank you. Yes, sir.
Good afternoon. Robert Gross from Coyote. First, let me just, before I ask my question, let me just make a quick comment on what was just said. As an American citizen, we've had enough government overreach in our life. Okay. We don't need to start telling people when they can water their lawns. Yeah. People should do the proper thing and follow the guidelines. I totally agree. And a lot of us don't have irrigation systems. This is our irrigation system, the hose. Anyway, as I said, I don't think we need to get in the business of having the water police, as you said, Chet, and I fully support what you said. The question I have is, let's assume everything goes as directed, everything's smooth. Is there anything in the contracts, once you've selected the specific contractors that are going to actually do these projects, is there anything to penalize them or fine them if they don't deliver on time and meet their goals?
All of the contracts we produce, and I've got Jeff here, all of the contracts that we are currently looking at and producing, to include Tenacity, are going to have rules about, you need to have this done by this time. If you don't, you get diminishing returns on what you're getting paid.
Okay. Makes sense.
Yep.
Thank you.
You bet.
Same name as before.
Yes, sir. You didn't change your name in that period of time? Wow.
Welcome to Chillico Village, Chet. We have our lawn cut on Monday, but sometimes it rains, and he comes on Tuesday. We are supposed to do Monday, Wednesday, and Friday.
Sure.
I called and explained. I can't remember who I talked to, one young lady, and she said it was okay to do it on Sunday to get 3 days.
Sure. I don't know who you talked to either, but I would like to say that if we get rain on Monday, you got a day. and you can get by with just 2. As an example, we got rain Sunday night or Monday night? Sunday night. And so I was good with that. It was beautiful. The lawn got rain. And so this week, and my particular irrigation system has a rain sensor on it. So if it rains, it doesn't go off. So on those days, I'm doing it 2 days because it didn't run on that day, which it didn't need to. It rained. So I'll do 2 days and I'm good. I don't want to be the person who tells you how you necessarily take care of your lawn. I'm simply trying to tell you these are the effects of what you're doing on the overall system. And if you want to water 3 days in a row, water 3 days in a row. We're just trying to fix the problem with, and these are Band-Aids, I'm not going to pretend they aren't, but they do affect it. And if we start finding all these different ones, as a person from out west mentioned, there's a lot of things we could do to reduce our water usage. But again, I really don't want to be part of the water police. I want you all to find your way and do what you feel is best for your own family and your own home, and by the way, your own lawn. Yes, sir.
A few years ago, we bought a bunch of property. We have, at the end of Tulaco, a couple of lots that look pretty good that were purchased at that time. They haven't been sold that I know of. Is there a reason that we're not trying to recoup?
I'm not sure which lots you're talking about, but trust me, if there's a lot that I could sell, I'd be selling it. Because, you know, again, anything I can do to bring in more income for the community to cover these costs, I'm more than willing to do. And we are doing everything in our power to sell land that we have, that we've purchased through the CCI purchase, so that we can bring in additional funds.
Okay. And to cut costs, since we can sell a grass shack, is it really necessary to have the billboards out there to push our community?
In terms of, you mean in Loudon? Marketing?
Marketing.
Well, unfortunately, there is an awful lot of other people in here who want to sell their homes or who want to sell their lots or want to, move land in the property. I know that somebody brought this up. Bob has addressed it several times. There's a lot of people who say, why aren't you stopping building? We have all these infrastructure issues. Why aren't we doing that? There's only one main reason. It's against the law. If you buy property and you want to build on it, I have no business telling you you can't. And we as a community, even though we are a planned community, legally, once you've bought a lot, I can't tell you what to do with that lot. I mean, I can tell you that the style house you want to put on it, but I can't tell you you can't build. That's definitely not within our purview.
You know, to defend marketing, having been in business for 35 years, working with a lot of different companies, I will tell you, every company I ever worked with who looked at marketing spend to save money regretted it.
Okay. Hello.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you for all your hard work. I'm not really good with math, and actually, you've already answered my question. I live in Chota. My name is Carmen Flores, and the building boom here over the years is really impressive, has been really impressive, and growth is good. But in terms of the stresses on our infrastructure, is there any way a temporary moratorium on building can be put into place as we sort of manage this crisis, critical mass moment that we're having?
As I said earlier, as far as I know, there is no legal way I can tell a homeowner you can't build. We have a lot of homes in the building process, and to be frank with you, a lot of them are taking as long as 2 years to get done. So I don't know that I could ever put a moratorium on building in a community that people have already bought their lots in. Now, I can not sell lots, there is that. But in terms of people who already own those lots, there's no way I can stop them legally from building or deter them from building and say, you can't put a house up this year. I can't do that.
You mentioned at the beginning that it's 85% built out already?
We're at somewhere between 83 and 85, yes, ma'am.
So the 15% are already sold, so these are already owned. What's
Correct.
left?
We actually have, Beth, what's the number of lots that have not been sold now? We're not talking you haven't been built on, but haven't been sold.
All All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Technically, most lots have been sold, but there's around 1,300 lots still left in Tellico Village that have not been built on, and those people have a right to build on them. Another thing I was just texting Matt to say, but since I have the mic, I will, is that these projects that have been identified are to help us get to build out. It doesn't mean that we have a system failure now. Is that a correct statement, Matt? Thank you.
Yes, sir.
My name is John Lamel. I live in Toqua. My wife and I have been there for 6.5 years. In that period of time, I've reduced my lawn from whatever size it was to about 1/3 that size so I could eliminate any problems. And in fact, my goal is to get to where there is no irrigation required. Now, we talk about, and I think, I may have something wrong here, but I understand that the people who use more than the minimum pay less per gallon for the amounts above that. Is that correct?
No, sir, it is not.
So
the more you use, the more you pay.
Is the rate the same?
I'm sorry?
Is the rate per gallon the same, or does it increase as you
go past the points? Every time you go past a certain level, there is an increase in the dollar per gallon. Yes, sir.
In dollars per gallon?
Yes, sir. Or 1,000 gallons, I think is how it's listed. We have a break at a point every 1,000 gallons. Yes.
My ultimate point is going to be that I'm with you. I don't want irrigation, please. I don't think they'd work. Nothing else works around here. However, I think you got the absolute best tool in the world for eliminating excessive water use. Raise the rates more. If you use more, pay a lot more.
I understand. Unfortunately, I can go there with you, but I think there's probably approximately 10,000 people who are near and dear to everybody's heart who would want to argue that point with me a lot. But I don't disagree with you. The more we change the price, the more we're going to change people's behavior. I get that part. Or at least we think we will.
If you don't want to bite the bullet, then we're going to live with this forever.
Understood.
And it's a very simple problem to resolve. And it's being exercised on all of us every day for the rest of our lives.
Yes.
So, anyway, enough said.
Hey, that's not good.
Just getting older. Teresa Reed from Toqua. So thank you all. Really know this is a tough challenge, and we hate the expense, but it's not going to go away. I know we have to do this. So great work on the presentation, but I want to echo, I think, what John Olson was saying was maybe there are ways to think outside the box to manage some of this stuff. I thought his ask on maybe you guys encouraging activity at certain times might be helpful.
I don't disagree with that at all.
So a year ago, when we were talking about the water authority, you all had a plan to have neighborhood captains and all this stuff to get people go door to door to get signatures. You could do that same kind of activity to try to encourage people to understand behaviors that would be beneficial.
Sure.
So with that, I know that the I&I, this water infiltration, where it's coming from, nobody knows. And Matt, I thought your presentation was great online. And I think we should try to figure it out. Maybe you don't want to spend the money for your crew to go out there, but you should call me and tell me what I should do and I'm volunteering my house to find out if my house is guilty of water infiltration. I didn't build it. I don't know. I know that the house that I live in was built when there were no inspectors. So I would think houses 2000 and before would potentially be guilty of some kind of impropriety from builders that might have connected to the septic, taking the easy way out. So maybe do a 200, 250 household sampling to see what you get. And if it looks like it's not that big of a deal, then you move forward. But if it's a big deal, maybe it's something you address the root cause. Because as somebody said, we go with 750 million gallons and we don't address this water issue. Maybe now we need to go with an additional 750 million gallon tank. So it seems sensible to address the root cause, or at least to make some effort to address root cause. So I did want to ask another question. I know that Jacobs Engineering is maybe the gold standard in engineering, but why only one bid? I mean, why haven't we reached out to another operation to get some insight and opportunities on how to resolve our issues? And I would assume that LUB would have been a great place to just ask questions. Hey, we'll pay you, come on and give us some ideas on what we should be doing. And then back to the water authority. $36 million over 30 years is just over $17 a month per household. It's 6,000 households. Rough math, I could have gotten it wrong, but if we go with incorporation and turning ourselves into a city, we have that option. So is that something you guys have talked about at all?
What a fantastic segue. My next town hall, not this coming one, but the one after that, is going to be on nothing but what it takes for us to incorporate, so that everybody has an understanding of that.
Hi, this is Gary Zika. I think a lot of you guys know me. Since you've all gotten emails to all the PSAC members and the board members on questions, I've got about 14 questions out there related to both the sewer and water and the odor problems that we're experiencing. My background, civil engineer, 40 years experience. I got a PE in Illinois and Texas. I'm more than qualified to read these Jacobs reports. A lot of the Jacobs reports are not available online. I wish they all were. I could read the rest of them. A lot of them are drafts. But you're not addressing the root cause on the sewer problem. There's no reason to build a sewer tank to store sewage water. Absolutely wrong. And Matt, you don't want to do it. You're right. You shouldn't be doing it. It's only going to cause you more headaches and maintenance. And if you don't address that problem, I'll guarantee in the future, and I don't know when, a year from now, 5 years from now, that tank will overflow and will go into the lake. And I don't think anybody wants that.
I don't think that any of the problems we currently have are, and if somebody tonight has presented this as the end-all, be-all, and we're going to solve all the problems of the village by doing these 5 projects, they have unequivocally lied to you. It will not. And there are more, as somebody brought up, what about all the pipes? This is not the last water project we're going to have. We own over, I am told it's 100 miles of pipe. What are the odds? And so we've got to look at everything. I don't disagree that we have to try and continue to find and locate the water I&I. The problem is time. And all these tanks and all this other stuff gives us is a little time, because you're correct. If we don't stop and find the problem sooner or later, it's going to get worse. I don't disagree at all.
Yeah, the inflow problem, Matt, you went through a very detailed analysis of how much it's going to cost us compared to building these tanks. I buy a car, I expect the tires and the brakes to wear out, and I replace those. No difference on the gaskets and the seals on the tanks, on the collection tanks. And the grinder pumps, yes, you do have to get into those tanks to replace grinder pumps. And if you didn't know that, I'm ashamed.
Of course we do.
Okay. And so you made on your nice little videos, you make like it's the end of the world on some of this stuff. It's not. This is standard type things that have to be maintained. And that's where it seems like the POA is falling down on, is maintaining, just like the roads, you've got to repave them once in a while. On these collection tanks, you've got to address them. I spent 2 years looking at them. Is there a report out there? That's one of my questions. Is there a report? They looked at every one of the tanks in the neighborhood. Did they say they all needed to replace? I don't think so. So that's on the sewer. And on the water tank, there's a whole question about, do you even need to have a water tank up on the hill right now? Because the LUB agreement said the storage tank that they built up on the hill behind the pickleball courts up there is our water tank. And that's the requirements you have to have with TDAC, is to have a certain amount of water storage. And so that's our tank up there. We don't even need a tank on our system right now. And if you're trying to boost up the water pressure, a lot of the people have already hit on it. Change the irrigation, and that is the problem. You push that irrigation to the wee hours in the morning, and you spread it out, you don't have a low pressure problem throughout the neighborhood during the day. So, that's
Okie
my
dokie,
point.
thank you.
Yeah, my name is John Miranda. I'm fairly new in the area, moved in about 7 months ago. So,
welcome.
Yeah, great to be here. Listening and taking in a lot of feedback from guys like Gary, subject matter experts, and some others that I've met in the village so far. And clearly, $36 million is a big, serious number. And mutually, right, the homeowners should be very well versed in understanding what that number means and where it came from. And my concern, and in my background, I've always questioned third-party sources and Jacobs, and not to pick on them, but I'm really trying to understand the vetting process that you went through to first of all get to $36 million. And then I'm trying to understand, were there others who, I think the other young lady talked about, were there other resources that you tapped into? And are you listening to some of the village subject matter experts like Gary and others who are voicing their concerns and giving you, I think, very fundamental solutions? And so those are a lot of questions that I'm throwing at you, because $36 million is a big number. $80 a month extra on our bill, it's a big number. Things like, let's do some irrigation. I think we have to be a little bit more disciplined on setting those rules. It can't be a can you, it has to be a must. And there's ways to control that. So it's a lot I'm throwing at you, but the big question is the vetting process, other resources have you looked into, and are you considering some of the subject matter experts that are voicing their concerns and giving you some pretty good solutions?
So up on the stage, there are 5 homeowners who are all engineers, okay, who have for the last 5 years, not 2 years, not 6 months, 5 years, have waded through these projects in detail. They're your representatives, and they are trained engineers. They have sat with Jacobs. They have questioned Jacobs. And by the way, the processes that we're bringing you were not the first processes. We've been over this and changed and found better ways and came up with cheaper ways to do this. That's been their position and what they've done for us. So to say that we've not gone outside of Jacobs and asked, they're homeowners just like you. And they're the ones who volunteered their time over this period of time to be sure that Jacobs isn't giving us a bill of goods, to be sure we haven't taken all the steps. And in truth, there are still other steps we need to take. It's a matter of time, and that's the issue.
That's a good answer, but I'm still looking for the vetting process. So I certainly appreciate the volunteer work, of course. However, what information, if I was going to put a small chart together that shows, here's the issue, here's the problem, and here's how we went through the process of trying to assess the problem, get to the root cause of the problem, and try some of these other proposed fundamental solutions that are out there. I'm sorry, I just haven't seen that yet. I have not seen any kind of a vetting. I'm hearing a lot, but I've not seen it. Maybe that's part of it, so pardon my ignorance if I missed that somewhere. But I'm really looking for validation that we have done our due diligence before we sign up for $36 million with a question mark behind it. So that's all I have to say, but thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate your comments. Yes, sir.
The I&I problem. Matt indicated before that he would much rather solve the problem than put in facilities to take care of the results. And I agree with him totally. Here's a diagram of the tank. The inlet is molded into the tank. It's locatable. It's 2 foot below the grass. Do we have to totally enclose it? Do to have 100% water stoppage? No. If we got 4 square inches of water flow in there, and we can cut it to 1 square inch, we have just dropped our I&I 75%.
Sure.
We should be able to come up with an I&I solution more applicable than a, what's it, $10 million plus all the lift stations that it will cost as a response to the result of the problem. Let's fix the problem of the I&I inflow.
Okay. So Matt may have some other things, and I want to make, unless there's someone else, I just want to wrap this up. One of the things that I keep bringing it up, and maybe I'm not being clear about it, to find the I&I problem is doable, and it will have to happen. I can't argue that point at all. But there's one problem with it, and it's time. It takes time to go and find all these things. It takes time to find it. And if we find a solution, then it takes time to make a difference that will do that. Now, the gentleman just said if you fix 1/4 of it and you save 75% of the I&I for that tank, there's almost 7,000 of those tanks. And so we've got to find a way to solve this problem. There is no question. It is a matter of time that we cannot allow the other possibilities that come along with taking time to happen. So that's why the tank has to go in, and that's why we're not going to stop there. We have to go and find these things. But to try and say that there's a simple fix that can be done in weeks or months or even a year is not an honest remark. It's not a statement that can be facilitated in any way. And so we still have to find it, and we will. One more.
You simply take an injectable grout pipe, drive it 2 foot into the ground, over the location of the grout, put about a gallon of grout in, and you're going to shut down a lot of the water. $250 hour per house.
Got it? Okay.
I'm speaking for the online crowd. Madeline Straub would like to know, given the majority of the issues with irrigation systems, are we charging an assessment for new irrigation systems, and are we promoting a more water-wise system for landscaping and use in the future?
I don't know that we've put any stipulation on irrigations at all, is the direct answer. Other than I personally have a rain gauge on mine, and that was put on by my builder, so I think that's probably one of the best things you could do to control overwatering.
And I will say that the ACC has brought in landscaping crews and irrigation companies, usually yearly or bi-yearly, to educate them on our issues and help them help you to fix those. Amanda Rogers, she has a lot of comments, so I will share them in their entirety with the board and staff. But basically, she just said she's lived here for 2 months, and had she known all of these issues were lingering, she might have made a different choice. And how are we going to make sure that new people know about these? And we will have a flyer at the Welcome Center, and it will be distributed to all the realtors now that a decision, or once the board actually makes a for sure decision. Sorry, I have a lot of comments I have to weed through here. Mary asked, what are we doing about lowering our percentage of leaks or water loss? And is that something that's being considered?
That's the I&I question.
No, that's water loss. I&I is water infiltration.
Oh, you mean
water
that
loss.
every month there's water loss that we have no way of knowing where that is, pipe leaks, that sort of thing? Is that what she's talking about?
Yes, and do we have KPIs trying to
Matt,
reduce
you want
that?
to address that one?
Monitor. Some people, am I on? Okay. We do have what we call unaccounted for water. So water loss, unaccounted for, it's basically the same thing. That is a KPI that I report to monthly generally, sometimes quarterly to the board. We hover in the neighborhood of 25 to 33% on a monthly basis. You take that from what you purchase through your master meters at LUB and TAS, and you compare that against what you sold through your household meters, there will be a loss. I mean, there is no way to avoid that. You're going to have leaks. We have to fire flow hydrants to verify pressure. Well, that means putting at least 500 gallons a minute outside your fire hydrant and assessing the pressure at the nearest adjacent to make sure you have that. So it's an unavoidable thing. It is something we track on a regular basis. The board authorized the purchase of 1,400 new water meters. So water meters, mechanical ones in particular, have a little impeller in them. They spin, and over time they spin and they spin and they spin and they spin, and then they don't spin so much. When they're not spinning, it's not accounting for water. So I do believe the installation of additional water meters will improve our unaccounted water, and yes, there are KPIs, and yes, we track it.
And last one, have we considered a discount for people who want to pay all up front?
We did discuss whether a discount would be appropriate. We concluded that based on our billing system and based on the discussion we even had today about the fee over time and some of the opportunities for adjustment, that it just didn't make sense for us to offer that. We also were concerned about what discount rate to use for that, recognizing that we're in a volatile interest rate environment, so the rate that we suggested would be difficult to identify from just a pure financing perspective, and therefore we felt it was best to just keep it as a straight $80 fee on the bill.
The other consideration that went into that that Mike didn't mention was if you would decide, if you paid up front and then sold your home within the 5-year horizon, it'd be non-refundable. So it'd be a difficult thing for, obviously, you trying to figure out how you put that in your transaction. And so that's why this is a pay-as-you-go system. If you would decide to sell your home, at that point, you would only be that deep in the fee.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, I sincerely want to thank you for those of you who have tolerated staying until the very end. Thank you very much. And have a lovely evening. Thank you again for spending your time here.